Hello and welcome to Forte's B School short course series. My name is Crystal Brooks and I'm Director of Development here at Forte. And I see folks are continuing to join us in the room. So I'll just pause for a moment as we wait for some folks. In the meantime, I would just love to welcome you all to our B School short course series. This event is our Career Advancement in Finance, a fireside chat with Dr. Jillian Alderman from Pepperdine University's Graziadio Business School. And really looking forward to this event. And moderating that discussion will be Karen Jackson, who is Executive Director of Recruitment at Pepperdine at Graziadio. So welcome to you all. It's great to be with you today. As I mentioned, as folks are logging in, my name is Crystal Brooks, and I am Director of Development here at Forte, and have the pleasure of working with more than 200 MBA, executive and professional MBA, and undergraduate schools that are all working toward the same mission of more women leading. And we are very pleased to welcome you today. So if my colleague Alexia can move us to the next slide here, I have just a few words of welcome from Forte before we dig into this discussion. You may or may not know that Forte has been around now for 20 years. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. And you are part of that community, part of our More Women Leading community. You can see it behind me. You can see it on my shirt here. We really are here for you and to see more of you leading in business school, in the career landscape, in finance, for example, on today's topic, and in just corporate boardrooms, in leadership in general. So we are so happy to welcome you today. We look forward to continuing our work. And the next slide shares a little bit of how we do that. You may know that more than 50,000 women attend events with us each year. We have had MBA women participating in our forum series. We are currently all over the country for folks that are exploring MBA programs. We've awarded more than $400 million in scholarships through our Forte Fellows program, and 16,000 of those women were part of that Fellows community. And we have seen a huge uptick in MBA enrollment, and that's really where Forte got our start, although we have programming just like this webinar across the board, from early career all the way through professionals that are looking to advance and take their next career steps. So without further ado, I would love to turn it over to our colleagues here at Graziadio. And I think Karen Jackson, who, as I mentioned, is Executive Director of Recruitment, can share a little bit about Pepperdine before she introduces our speaker, Dr. Alderman. So Karen? Oh, and Karen, it looks like you are still on mute. We still have these Zoom days.
Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Karen.
No problem. Sorry about that. Good morning. Pepperdine Graziadio is celebrating over 50 years of offering a wide range of programs, including full-time, part-time, and executive programs. All of our programs are available both online and across our 5 California graduate campuses. And today in our discussion, we are going to specifically reference our part-time MBA and our executive MBA. This slide does provide some information regarding our part-time and executive programs, the duration, and the requirements. And great. And so today we are going to have, I hope, a really interesting and engaging discussion with Dr. Jillian Alderman, who is the Associate Professor of Accounting. Prior to her academic experience, Jillian worked as an auditor at Deloitte and is professionally licensed as a CPA in Florida and certified fraud examiner. Jillian's primary research interests involve the study of how individuals' beliefs, traits, and backgrounds influence their lives and the resulting impact on organizations and society. So really excited to introduce to you all Dr. Jillian Alderman. And Dr. Alderman, is there anything else you'd like to share about your background and our topic for today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. I am delighted to be here to talk with you about finance careers. So just to give you an idea of sort of the context of why I was potentially asked to be doing this, I do have a background in accounting, and I'm an accounting faculty member. However, I did pivot into higher education after a couple of years of working at Deloitte as an auditor. I decided I wanted to teach for the rest of my life. That was going to be my passion. So I went back and got my PhD, also in accounting, so lots of accounting background. But once I got a job at Pepperdine, and I started as a faculty member at Pepperdine, my teaching career shifted quite a lot to broaden my perspectives beyond just accounting into finance and also MBA, like preparing MBA students for leadership roles. So I am now the chair of our part-time MBA program, so the faculty committee that is in charge of developing curriculum, admissions, and things like that. And I've really developed a passion for basically helping equip financial professionals to build into leadership roles, because their roles tend to change so much, and the skills that you need change so much as you develop into a leader if you're a financial professional. So that has been sort of my passion educationally, and why I'm here today.
That's wonderful. So let's kind of dive in and talk about typical roles and career paths for financial professionals. What do you think those typical roles are?
So I'll give you the short answer, but it'll still feel like a long answer because there are so many different career paths you could take as a financial professional in accounting and finance, or the blend of the two. I'll also talk a little bit about how an MBA is either well-positioned or perhaps maybe an MS program would be a better fit for some of those career paths. So I think the best fit for an MBA, if you're going to get an MBA, usually those types of students are interested in advancing into some type of leadership position, pivoting into perhaps some kind of industry or key role that they had not done before, or they're entrepreneurs, right? Thinking about starting their own business. And these are all viable pathways in the finance industry for financial professionals. So for example, what we sometimes will refer to as industry or corporate roles for financial professionals is one pathway for career development. And typically in those types of roles, you are working at one company, you're providing your financial expertise just for that company, as opposed to working for a firm who's outsourcing services being hired by other companies. And a lot of times at the entry level, those jobs will begin at you tend to be a little bit more siloed into accounting or finance. But as you start to rise the ranks within the roles within that company, being a financial professional in accounting or finance, they tend to blend together a lot. So we'll notice that as you work your way up, having both accounting and finance knowledge actually becomes really important. And you need to be prepared to, make key financial decisions, help keep the company profitable, secure financing, but also to communicate this information to key decision makers, right? So some of those soft skills start to become really important. The last thing I'll say about this role is that this is one of those roles that in an MBA program, teaching in the MBA program, teaching accounting courses and advising students, that is one of the roles that I think an MBA is an excellent fit for, because it equips you for those soft skills, but also the key financial skills that you need to move up. And it's also a viable path to the C-suite. So a lot of companies will hire internally and promote internally from their finance and accounting departments all the way up to controller positions, and then the next level being CFO, and then the next level being CEO. So this is a really viable leadership path all the way to the top to start out as what we would call an industry or corporate job in accounting or finance. The last thing I'll talk about is what I mentioned as entrepreneurs, right? That financial professionals, and one of the career paths, viable career paths for financial professionals, is to be an entrepreneur. Start your own business, work with others, bring people together to start a business. I think that is one of those career paths where you really have a major strength if you come into this with finance knowledge, right? So getting an MBA, for example, and having a concentration in finance, right, could really help you as an entrepreneur, because you have the language of business skills, basically, to be able to communicate your needs to key professionals in your business that you're starting up, to obtain your financing, to develop reports for people making decisions about giving you financing, right? All of those things being incredibly valuable if you're going to start your own business. There are so many other pathways I can talk about in careers, but we might actually even bring some of them up in the rest of our chat today, and also absolutely open to that in the Q&A if anybody has questions about other roles.
That's great. Thank you so much. So what emerging industry trends are influencing the career paths of financial professionals?
So one of the areas that I'm super interested in and have actually published some research and actively I'm working with doctoral students on topics is in the area of how artificial intelligence is impacting the industry. And it's really not just limited to financial professionals where AI is impacting. I mean, we're seeing it come up all over the place, right? And potentially impacting all jobs. But my research has really dug into how this is going to affect finance and accounting professionals, and even specifically women, how this can potentially affect women. Because what we're seeing happening is that accounting and finance is sort of on the front lines of implementing artificial intelligence and automation to basically replace jobs, right? Or tasks, right? We haven't quite seen it actually impacting the number of jobs yet, but there are definitely tasks and roles being replaced within businesses or changed and modified. And what we're seeing is a lot of that right now is happening at the entry level. And unfortunately, if you look at the statistics of the gender balance in different roles as you work your way up through the company, the entry level roles are actually, in accounting in particular, are actually balanced towards female. So there's actually more representation of women in entry level accounting jobs. But as you start to work your way up in the ranks, right, that representation tends to drop pretty significantly all the way up to the top, where now we only have representation of maybe 10% of CEOs are women, right? Now, unfortunately, the implications of that when AI starts to come in and take over some of those entry-level roles is that I am predicting that we might see some imbalances, right? Those entry-level roles are where women are, right? That's where we have a lot of women working. And if those roles were basically a pathway for them to, enter into the company and work their way up into the leadership positions. So when we eliminate that pathway, what do we replace it with? Right. So one of the things I'm really interested in is how MBA programs and other, higher education programs can specifically help mitigate those risks, right, of women once those entry-level roles are either eliminated or greatly reduced, right? Well, we're going to have to start providing a very different type of educational experience to make sure that women are still represented in the jobs that remain, right? And that balance still exists. So, for example, at Pepperdine, I'm really encouraging us to lean into what we call industry collaborative learning, where in your degree program, you actually gain experience that you would normally have gained in an entry-level role, so that you can actually jump into a leadership or management role having confidence that you have actually gotten on the job experience during your degree program, right? So that's just one of the ways that I think an education and an educational experience in a degree program can help mitigate those risks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say what a proactive approach to this issue. I think it's something that a lot of professionals may not be considering as we look at how AI is coming onto the landscape. So I really appreciate that that information and the thought on that.
Yeah, it's something that, so I published an article on this about 3 years ago, and I've been invited to talk about it several times. Right now, to be clear, it's just speculation that this could happen, right? We don't know. It might end up that those entry-level jobs change, right? That the jobs are still there, but the skills you need are different, right? So we have to adapt as educators and make sure that we are really updating our programs and remaining up to date with all the things that are happening in the real world right now, because it's changing fast. So it's pretty exciting. Now, on a related note, I can talk about a second trend that really along the same lines is the representation of women in the C-suite, right, in those leadership roles. So as I just mentioned, I'm concerned about the impact of AI on that growth path, the pathway from an entry-level role to the C-suite, because that is a traditional path for women to work their way up in an organization and make it to the C-suite, right? Well, I can tell you that we are still greatly underrepresented in the C-suite, right? So I'm sure that many of us have read articles about this. A recent article, for example, the Fortune 500 global companies list was just released. And women represent 10% of the CEOs for the largest global public companies, right? So clearly not as well represented as we should be there, right? So we've got a lot of ways to go. However, I'm going to put a spin on this. That 10%, that is a milestone, actually. So for the very first time, we have 10% representation of women in those roles. In fact, the last time they made the list, I believe it was only 5%. So we are seeing it move in the right direction, in my opinion. We're seeing that representation starting to increase in both women and minorities. It is a slow process, but that seems like a bit of an abrupt increase over a short period of time. So I'm really hopeful about the trajectory of that and the trends that we're seeing in the industry associated with that. And last but not least, I'll talk about the fact that there's another trend that's, I think, is really promising, is the CFO role. So historically, the CFO role, so Chief Financial Officer, is, financial professionals sort of the top role for a financial professional in a corporation, other than a CEO. And actually, historically, anywhere from 8 to 25% of CEOs are actually hired from the CFO role. So that CFO path that I've been talking about, right? That path to CFO through internal promotions all the way to CEO is a viable pathway to that top role in a company. And what we're seeing is higher representation of women in CFO roles. So that is up. It's if you look at S&P 500 companies, for example, like the top 500 companies size-wise in the US, 16% of CFOs are women, and that is up from 6.3% a decade ago. So we're seeing that shift even more significantly in the right direction, I think, in terms of representation. So from my perspective, when I am advising students who come into my class, I always ask, what do you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years, right? Well, how are you going to use this MBA? And anyone who says that they want to be CEO, right? They want to be in the C-suite, right? I encourage them to really take their accounting and finance classes very seriously and even think about a finance concentration, because the CFO role, right, that is a pathway to CEO. And it's a viable pathway, particularly that we're seeing for women. So I'm really excited about those trends.
Yeah, those trends are encouraging. The incremental growth to CEO and the slightly more significant growth to CFO is definitely encouraging. Are there any networking or mentorship opportunities or groups that you recommend for women to gain information on securing C-suite opportunities?
Oh,
as a follow-up, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a current MBA student, or if you're considering an MBA program, one of the very first things I always advise students to do is to lean into either mentorship opportunities that are formally offered to you in your program. So I know Pepperdine does that. So we'll actually offer mentorship, or by way of the existing structures that exist in your university, you can join student clubs. That's one of the, I think, a very rich resource for networking, mentorship, in groups that are really directly engaged with industry. So a lot of the student clubs will actually bring in guest speakers and alumni and things like that to help you with that specific industry that you're interested in. And I really highly recommend that. I know Pepperdine has a finance club, for example, and they are actually they even have a fund that they actively invest with. Like they allow the students in the finance club to actually, do real life investing with a fund. So you have really great contacts that you can make through there. I also, since I've been talking a lot about that career path, from accounting and finance functions within a business all the way up to CEO, CFO roles. One of the licensed certifications and organizations that is a really good support for that does have student memberships, and that is the Institute of Management Accountants. So it is an institute that actually blends finance and accounting, and they really specifically they basically career growth into a CFO, CEO type role. So it's really equipping students and their professionals that are part of that organization with the up-to-date contacts and networking and skills, up-to-date information in the industry and things like that associated with being in those types of financial professional roles. So I highly recommend looking into the Institute of Management Accountants and joining as a student member or possibly a full member, thinking about the license that they offer, which is the Certified Management Accountant license, as a potential extra network that you may not have considered before.
That's excellent. Great information. So what do you think the benefits of an MBA? I know you've cited some, but let's further explore. What are the benefits of an MBA in the finance and accounting industries?
So I'm going to bring in some finance speak now. I'm going to talk about the ROI of an MBA. So the return on investment, for those who have heard the term ROI tossed around, but aren't really sure about what it means. The ROI is something that you'll hear about anytime that you have to invest time or money into something. You want to make sure that it's paying off, right? So that it's paying off in some tangible way. Now, sometimes the ROI are things that aren't able to be quantified. So things like access to a network, a meaningful career path that you're passionate about, right? Those types of things, right? Those just knowledge and enrichment of your life. Those are part of an ROI that are harder to quantify. However, we can quantify very clearly the financial ROI, and it is very clearly a positive one and strong, and it happens very quickly. As soon as you graduate with your MBA, right? Studies show across the board that specifically an MBA, so not all degrees can actually show this, but having an MBA instead of just an undergraduate degree can boost your lifetime earnings by anywhere from $1 million to $8 million. I mean, it varies a lot based on all kinds of different individual factors and decisions that you make along the way. But across the board, every single study that I have seen has shown a significant lifetime earnings boost of having an MBA. So there is, no matter what people say, oh, is an MBA really valuable? It absolutely is. We see it in the numbers, right? So the, other things, intangibles aside that I just talked about, you actually will financially benefit from having an MBA. And that usually happens because of a salary boost. So the salary boost tends to happen very quickly. So most of our students will actually see the salary boost either while they're in the MBA program. So people recognizing that they're getting an MBA and investing in their education and will actually receive a salary boost while they're students. And then immediately after, either within the role they already have, getting a salary boost or being promoted, or actually being able to pivot into a higher salaried position. In fact, our data coming from Pepperdine's MBAs, right, and the data that we've analyzed there indicates that based on the salary boost, it only takes around 1.5 to 3 years to recoup the investment that you're making in an MBA degree based on your increased salary. And that is a very short term for actually being able to recoup an investment. I can't think of many other investments that you can make that will have that kind of financial returns. So as a finance professional, right, accounting and finance professional, I see those numbers and I'm like, that is powerful, right? Higher education is incredibly powerful for moving that needle and really increasing your earning power.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So what MBA courses have you found the most benefit for finance and accounting careers?
Oh, well, I'm going to be a little biased here because I teach the accounting course. So we call it the language of business for a reason. So I was part of just a recent curriculum innovation where we changed the title of the course to accounting, the language of business, because that is exactly what it is. So if you do not have financial literacy in the language of business, right, it's going to impair you for the rest of your career. That your growth trajectory is going to be stunted. Your ability to communicate with other people in key roles and make decisions based on financial information, right, is going to hold you back. So I am incredibly biased in this aspect, right? But I really passionately believe that accounting is definitely the most important. However, I can tell you that being part of a curriculum design committee, right, and leading that committee, we recognize the actual need to be interdisciplinary in an MBA program. So because of the fact that the large majority of people coming in are either thinking about going into leadership, pivoting, or being an entrepreneur, right? There's lots of other reasons, but those tend to be the top three. We feel a responsibility to make sure that our MBA students get a deep dive into all of the functional areas of a business, right? So you're going to take courses and develop, a deep dive into marketing, accounting, finance, business analytics, right? All of those key things that allow you to actually meet those needs that I just talked about, right? Coming out of the program and be able to either start your own business or communicate as a leader with other functional areas in a business.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And continuing this discussion, how have you built confidence or resiliency over the course of your career?
All right, we're going to go personal now. All right, yes, we'll talk a little bit about the things that maybe some setbacks that I've experienced and sort of how I've dealt with them. This is such an individual thing, though, and one of my biggest tips for dealing with setbacks and having resiliency and building confidence in the face of setbacks, right, is having an incredible mentor. Maybe more than one, right? So you may have multiple mentors for different purposes, but mentors can not only help you with career setbacks and help build up your confidence or help guide you during setbacks, but they can also build your confidence when opportunities arise, right? So my personal example of this is basically when I was selected to be part-time MBA programs chair. Right. I was a tenure track faculty member. So what that means is I was considered pretty much an early career professional coming in through higher education. And my mentor was chair of the program. And I did not realize this, but she had been sort of building me up as a member of her committee that she was leading to potentially be her successor and take over her leadership role along the way. And so I look back on this and I see those moments where she would build my confidence, build my knowledge, build up skills, talk positively about me in the right rooms with the right people, right? And to sort of set me on that trajectory to take over her role when she was promoted into an associate dean's role. And that kind of mentor can build your confidence like nothing else, right? Because you've got somebody who has your back, who is not only building your confidence, but actually teaching you along the way. And so I highly recommend, as if you don't already have this, right, developing really strong mentorship relationships with people around you, and then giving that back once you are in the position to do so, right? Because now that I am in leadership roles, I am starting to pay that back, right? I'm starting to invest my time in developing the next leaders of our organization and making sure that I'm building up those individuals and paying it forward in that way.
If you were fortunate you had your supervisor that was there to mentor you, but what if you're a woman, you're looking around, you're just not sure where to seek those mentors? Do you have any advice on that?
Absolutely. That's a great question because they don't just kind of appear. Well, sometimes they will. So sometimes I do remember my very first day at Pepperdine, I had a couple of the women leaders come up to me and just embrace me and say, welcome. And, that evolved into a mentorship relationship. So that sort of just came to me, right? I didn't have to do anything. But a lot of times you really do have to seek it out. Right. So that means actually putting yourself out there to ask for a meeting, to get, volunteer your time to assist someone on a project that is happening, right? And connect with that individual in that way, right? I know the term leaning in has been like way overused at this point, but really leaning into those opportunities to interact with people that you see could be mentors with you is a great way to foster those relationships that lead into mentorships. So if it doesn't just jump out at you, like sometimes it does, right? Obviously embrace those opportunities for mentors, but really think strategically about, right, seeking out the mentors in your organization that you see as being just incredible guide and incredible from the perspective of guidance and also helping you with your career.
Great advice. Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question, which you already touched on, but if you could continue to provide your insight, how can an MBA network help women connect to board and C-suite executive opportunities?
Absolutely. Yeah. So an MBA network. So my response to this one is sort of a bit layered because I'll talk first about what I see as your MBA network, because I actually see three components to it at a minimum. So I think your network, if you're in an MBA program, is you first have your immediate cohort-based network. So basically the other students that are going through the program with you. And those people become like family. You become really, really close to those individuals. You're kind of going through the battle together, like getting through the program and learning from each other and all of that. That's an incredible core network that you have when you come out of an MBA program. And that can last a lifetime, like I said, because they do become very similar to almost family, very close friends. You also have a second layer, which I see as the immediate mentors that you're exposed to during the degree program, like your faculty, right? Leaning into developing relationships and connecting and keeping that relationship long-term with the faculty teaching your classes and the alumni who have graduated from your MBA network. However, I do think that also the extended network, kind of referencing or looping back to the opportunities for clubs, for industry-related networks that you can join and things like that while you're an MBA student is really also important for the network. Now, the benefit of those networks and how that can actually help you as a woman connect to board and C-suite executives and opportunities is that it really can connect you with jobs, right? It can connect you with growth within your specific job. And it can also add sort of an extra layer of learning opportunity and promotion to help pair with your educational experience and help you move up. Oh, Karen, you are muted.
Thank you so much. So we do have some questions from the chat that I'd like to transition to. We have someone that says they're an executive with 15 plus years experience in general management, venture building, operations, and strategy across industries like tech and media. Most recently, I was CEO of a startup digital media company, training and employing people who were formerly incarcerated to go into podcasting and film production. So can you speak to how a recent executive MBA might pivot into financial services industry via a non-accounting finance role? So
oh, interesting. Wow, what an impressive experience, by the way. I'm reading the experiences that you've had and what you've been doing with your startup. That's incredible, first off.
Yeah,
so thank you for sharing that with us. I think that pivot is really, it's not an easy thing to do. And this is absolutely where your network starts to come into play, because the challenge of the pivot is that people who did not have to pivot, people who sort of took a traditional path into financial services have the connections already, right? So they've been working in the industry for years, so they've already developed their network in financial services. So leaning really heavily into building that network, and probably from the ground up, is going to be essential, right? So because that is how you get a job, right? Usually nowadays, it's not going to necessarily be, being one of thousands of people applying to a job online or something like that, right? Like positioning yourself to actually get into an industry and pivot into an industry, a network is going to be where your disadvantage is, right? So I would highly recommend perhaps even thinking about joining professional networks, starting to attend meetings for those professional networks, thinking about a path to licensing for the particular role that you're looking into. Those are ways to sort of get into and build a network that you may not have already if you're thinking about pivoting into a financial services position. So I hope that helps, but I think I'm really a big believer in that, and building a network. And I think that is the one disadvantage you have if you're having to pivot, as you don't already have that existing network.
Excellent. Okay, we have another question. Have you seen any accounting firms using AI as a startup?
Yeah, so far using AI, it is I would say it's in a bit of the early experiment phase. And I noticed that there really are a lot of firms implementing AI. There are all kinds of different firms of different sizes implementing AI, but it is definitely a risk. I have not necessarily had direct experience with a startup using AI, but I have to tell you that logically, a startup using AI from the start makes more sense to me than a large company pivoting and implementing AI and having to change roles and having to go through that whole change management process. So in my opinion, I actually think it would be, I don't want to say easier for a startup to implement AI from the start, right? And actually integrate that into your technological, plan of technology, integrate that into your job roles, right from the start is in my opinion, actually an easier path than what these larger companies have of having to bring in new technology, train the existing people on new technology, change their roles, right? I think you actually starting up with the plan to integrate AI into your business model, I think is actually a really good idea.
Okay, and then I think we have time for one more chat question. Do applicants need to already be financially successful in order to be good candidates for the MBA with a focus on finance?
No, we actually see a lot of people pivoting. Like I mentioned, the pivot, we see a lot of MBA students coming in with backgrounds that have nothing to do with finance, coming in, taking my accounting class, taking the finance class and going, wow, I missed the boat on this in my undergrad. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm good at this. And what those individuals do is they lean very heavily into, building up their finance network, like I was mentioning before, using the alumni connections, using the faculty connections in the MBA program, and they'll declare a finance concentration so that they also build up their technical skills and expertise in the finance industry. And absolutely, we see that happening all the time. In fact, I'm seeing that actually as an increasing trend of the career pivot. So people coming to get an MBA and coming into the program without an idea of exactly how they want to pivot. They just know they want to change and they don't want to keep on the same trajectory that they're in. They don't want to be in the industry they're in or the job role they're in. They're not really sure exactly what they want that to be, but then through the interdisciplinary classes they take, right, they discover their passion and they declare their concentration and pivot using the resources there. So an MBA, I think, is actually perfect for that purpose.
And then can we maybe end the discussion? I know another benefit of Pepperdine Graziadio's MBA programs is the global intensive courses, which can also be a great way to interact with executives. You want to just touch a little bit on the global opportunities within the program?
Absolutely. So I'm hoping, I've got in the works, I'm hoping to actually put together a global trip to Italy. So I'm actually starting to in the process of that right now, because of the fact that there are basically the origins of our double entry accounting system, like our accounting information system came from Italy. So I'm kind of putting together one of those global programs to do that. But it's one of the most rich and meaningful experiences that students can have if they self-select in. So it's not required, but if they self-select to enroll in and go on one of the global trips, or potentially even dual enroll and actually take a semester abroad. That happens a lot as well. The learning experience is incredible. And the bonding. So I mentioned the bonding that you have with your MBA family. Take a trip with them overseas and the bonding is, exponentially stronger, right? When you bond on an overseas trip. So the global programs trips will typically involve an interactive consulting project. So that's what's really cool, is that typically the trips, you will have a learning experience where you'll learn the theory and underlying knowledge that you need before you leave. And then on the trip, you actually are paired with a company that has a business problem relevant to what you're learning about. And while you're on the trip, you're going to be engaging and learning more about their business. You visit the site of the business, you interact and interview the employees and things like that. And in real time are applying your business knowledge that you're learning in the class to actually consult on a real life problem. So I think that it's just an incredible experience all around, and also travel to some pretty amazing places. I know that the most popular trip that's going on right now being organized is to New Zealand. And it's a trip for digital marketing and luxury marketing, I believe, and 2 marketing professors leading it, 2 amazing women leading it. And they had an information session recently that broke records. So I'm really excited about them putting together something really meaningful for the students.
The darn mute button. Sorry about that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for touching on that topic. Well, I really appreciate your time this morning and the discussion. If there's no further questions, then we can move on, Crystal.
Looks like we've got one more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Karen, you might even be able to answer this one too. I think you've got some good knowledge about the executive. Oh, it's the Doctor of Business Administration. Yeah. What are the top reasons you recommend Pepperdine's Executive Doctor of Business Administration program? Awesome. So I actually teach in that program. So I teach one of the very first courses that you take in the program. And so I get a really good, and I advise students, right? So I get a really interactive experience with those students. And the benefit of this is that basically one of the first readings, and you actually could look this up if you're interested in it, there's an HBR, Harvard Business Review article that's called Act Like a Scientist. And it's an article that talks about the need for business professionals to act like scientists. So basically, to really understand the scientific method and how to actually apply the scientific method to test new ideas and to measure the actual success of new ideas in a business, right? So basically to run experiments within your business, to conduct focus groups, right? A lot of marketing professionals do this kind of stuff regularly from what I found out from my DBA students, but really expanding that to all areas of business. If you have an idea that you want to implement, you can test it and you can experiment with it and collect data before. And then you can actually measure the outcome to add weight to the decisions that you're making in the business world. And the Executive DBA program does exactly that. So basically, we equip our students with basically the curiosity of of basically being a scientist and applying that to the business world. So we have all of these big problems, big scale problems at the society level that can be addressed through science. We have problems at the micro level, at an individual business. So some of our students are actually running startups, and they came into the program because they said, I'm seeing these same problems happening. How can we solve these problems? Right? How can we solve change management in a startup? How can we as a startup help change management for the companies that we're trying to provide new software to, right? Answering these big questions through the scientific method is just an incredible skill that you develop in the executive doctoral program.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the credential that you get coming out of it, being a doctorate, is very powerful. So that it adds so much weight to whenever you bring information forward, or you are trying to influence some decision that's being made, right? Having that credential can go such a long way.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've also seen women, female executives come into the program that want to expand on their consulting or go into consulting oriented positions and have that research understanding so that they can go into a company, diagnose some of the issues that are going on, and put together a sound plan to optimize their ROI. So I agree with you 100%. And then you also have executives who do want to teach, who want to transition into academia, and that's an excellent way to do so as well.
Yeah, I do. I actually have a student that just graduated and walked across the stage on Saturday, this past Saturday, and his goal is he wants to pivot into academia and use his extensive professional experience that he's gained to teach. And we do see that coming through as well. But Karen, you did touch on the fact that it adds not only knowledge, but also the credential and weight behind a consultant, that you've got this, this degree that said, taught you how to do these things. Yeah.
That's right. All right, Crystal, I think we're wrapping up. Thank you so much. So, yes, here is my contact information. If there's anything that resonated with you today and you want more information, feel free to reach out to Dr. Alderman. Her email is on this slide, or reach out to me directly. Happy to provide additional information in regards to our programs. I think we do have a slide also with a QR code that you could quickly take a picture of. I'm not sure. That's okay. But our email address is on here, and feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Well, hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Alderman. Thank you, Karen. What a wonderful conversation. I really learned a lot myself. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank all of you for joining us as well. Thanks for listening. Please do join us for upcoming Forte webinars and events, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.